You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, man, how's it going out there?
Hey, it's doing pretty well. The NFL is, kind of the dead period. I'm not really a hockey fan or an NBA fan, so, starting to look ahead and enjoying everything coming out about rookie minicamps, OTAs starting, but, just pretty much doing mostly wedding stuff and work and trying to enjoy the nice weather while it's here because, living here in Iowa, you get 6 months of hot and wet and 6 months of cold and dry, so I'm trying to make the best of it when I have the transitional seasons.
There you go. Yeah, it's we're in our very short window here in Kansas as well of nice weather before it turns into the scalding hot with 40-mile-per-hour winds. Yeah, it's not fun, but so goes the Midwest. But right now there is OTAs going on, which is kind of fun, and we do have still some things for football to talk about, and I'm excited to get into this conversation about this rookie class and some expectations about that. But before we get to that, I want to let you know that you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH. And, of course, you can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. You can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. Also, if you enjoy our show, make sure you head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating where Building the Broncos along with Huddle Up are found under the Huddle Up podcast. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Well, Nick, we're kind of winding down a little bit on this rookie class. This is going to be one of those kind of make or break groups, I would say, for the future of the Denver Broncos. So I think we're going to be talking about them for quite a while. But really just kind of looking into this group, what we expect of them this season, and what would qualify as a successful year one in the NFL, I would say. Because I think sometimes people have maybe too big of expectations when rookies come in. You always think you're going to get those rookies that completely change the face of the franchise day one. I look at the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, they gave up 2 first-round picks. Well, they didn't see until his sophomore year that he was going to be a good quarterback. And a lot of times rookies they're just not ready. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some expectations of what they can bring to the Broncos. And let's start here with our first round pick, your Iowa boy, Noah Fant. What are your expectations year one from this kid?
Well, I think when you look at tight ends, it's important to look at the historical precedents for the position. Even when you have dominant players like Travis Kelce or Rob Gronkowski, they're not really putting up the volume stats that you see from, even just pretty good to, upper tier wide receivers. So, when you're looking at the stats of guys that are first round picks at tight ends, year one, year two, year three, typically it's kind of a slower learning curve before they can really break out. But looking at Fant, I do think that looking at his college stats, he might be able to replicate, if not even do a little bit better. Better passing game, more complete passing game than what he had at Iowa, and should have a lion's share of the targets from the tight end position. I do expect them still to work in, Troy Fumagalli / Jake Butt, maybe with tight end 3, as well as Jeff Hireman. But I do think there's a good chunk of targets available for him at the tight end position, especially compared with what he had last year, trying to split, targets and just the ball around with another great tight end, TJ Hawkinson. So my prediction right now for him this year, I have 56 receptions, 672 yards, 12 yards per catch, and 6 touchdowns, which, be a pretty solid year for him. Not great, but pretty solid.
Right. You said it, the rookie tight ends, especially, even the best ones are not outstanding. Rob Gronkowski, his rookie year, had 42 receptions, 546 yards. He did have 10 touchdowns. I will give him that part, but he only had 59 targets the entire season. And then year 2 is when he exploded into the NFL with 90 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 17 touchdowns. And so it takes that little bit of adjustment, even those guys that are those all-pro kind of players. And I think those are very realistic numbers. I'm hoping the touchdowns are a little bit higher. I'm hoping for around that 8 touchdown mark. Just in the idea of our red zone offense being very much improved, and hoping that he's going to be a very big part of that. It does depend a little bit on some of the other tight ends and how many snaps they are taken away from him. I mean, I know it's OTAs, but there's a lot of people hyping up Jake Butt today and the work that he was doing on the field and just catching everything that was thrown his direction. And I mean, I honestly, I mean, if these are the numbers he gets and Jake Butt comes out there and has 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, I mean, as long as the tight end group together can have a great group, that's all I really care about. But Noah Fant, I do think these are very solid numbers and very realistic numbers really for his rookie year, because I think he's going to be very much a prime target for the Broncos. I think they're going to have a lot of plays designed just for him, and not just in the red zone. I think that there's going to be a lot of plays to get him open and let him use that incredible athleticism to get down the field. And so I expect something very similar to this. When I was writing this out, I was thinking somewhere around 600 yards receiving. You had a little bit more than me, but I mean, just in that kind of range, in that 50-60 catch kind of area for him. And I was a little bit higher on the touchdowns. Like I said, I think 8 to 9 touchdowns this season, I think is very realistic with just what he does in the red zone.
Yeah, and looking at him just for a perspective, Travis Kelce, 2013, I think he was coming off injury, but 2014, the first year he played, he had 67 receptions, 862 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So maybe I'm a little bit low on the actual total yardage compared to what his receptions were. His yards per reception actually at Iowa was much lower than you'd think, but they kind of used Fant more as a red zone guy, and then they used Hawkinson more in between the 20s. So maybe a little bit more yardage for this type of reception prediction, 56, maybe looking at more 13 yards per reception instead of 12. But I mean, if he can walk away with this year, he has a chance to be one of the better rookie tight ends that we've seen over the past few seasons. I mean, Evan Ingram had a solid statistical season his first year. OJ Howard, not as much, although he was looking really good last year before he got injured, especially with his touchdown production. But maybe 6 touchdowns, I think, is the floor. I'm trying to be a little bit conservative in that regard, but I could see anywhere. I mean, I could see 9, maybe even 10 if they're getting down there and they're able to scheme him open. But, I could also see 4. Tight end's a pretty fluctuating position dependent on a lot of other things around him. So I think 6 is probably a safe number. Right.
And you're right. What happens around him will be a big indicator. If the second-year wide receivers can take that second step or take that next step in their game, it opens things up for him where you can't just go and double team him. I don't know. It just there's so much that plays into these kind of numbers of what these players can do. I do think you're going to see a lot more that yards per carry or yards per catch kind of thing, just because there were a lot of seam routes that he ran or wheel routes there at Iowa that he was open, and not to dig too much on Nate Stanley, but there was a lot of times he missed him, or he'd be wide open and Stanley would go somewhere else with the football. So I don't think that's completely his fault, but this last year just was kind of a weird anomaly. We talked about it last week with our guest of just, he wasn't quite in the offense that was designed for a player like him. And so I think in many other systems, I think especially in a spread system, he would have dominated. I think he could have been that 900,000 yard season kind of tight end, just because, I mean, you can't cover that much ground that he can cover. So it's some of that, but it's just he's going to have to learn to work within the system of what the Broncos are going to try to do for him. And I think they are going to try to, especially those short routes, because he does really good at those crossing routes to get himself open. Zone, man, they can't keep up with him. So I'm excited to see what they can do with him this year.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I do think that he actually comes in more as the de facto tight end too. I think in like obvious 11 personnel situations where it's a passing down, 3rd and long, you see him be the tight end. But if it's 11 personnel and they're, more grinding, controlling the flow of the game, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Hireman as the starter, right away. Maybe Fant takes it away from him, but again, tight ends typically take a little bit of time, and I think that our current best tight end as a blocker is Hireman. So I think that he's going to have more of an impact in this offense this year than I think people are predicting right now.
I will say, I read something today about OTAs. They had Noah Fant going up against Von Miller and just trying to get that matchup going. They're really working the rookies against a lot of the tougher matchups. They had Dalton Risner going against Bradley Chubb. And so just, trying to get these guys microwaved to be ready to go this year. So I thought that was a really cool thing to do, especially OTAs when you're just starting out. Hey, welcome to the NFL. Now you got to work.
Yeah, God.
This is a different breed of level of play compared to what you ever went against in college.
Gosh, man, going up against Von Miller would have to be pretty surreal. Probably give you an appreciation that he's on your team.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like I said, Dalton Risner have to go against Bradley Chubb. I mean, he went against some good edge rushers when he was there at K-State. Montez Sweat is one. But again, even Bradley Chubb's a different level than a Montez Sweat, in my opinion.
And we know what Bradley Chubb is more so after a year of the NFL.
Right. Though
so
that's true. That is
not
true.
As much projection, so to speak. But yeah, what do you think about Hireman? How do you see this tight end depth chart shaking out, week one? Assuming
Week one,
no injuries.
I'm with you. I think Hireman coaches tend to lean towards veterans. And it just makes sense early on just to kind of ease the rookie into getting onto the field. Yeah. And so especially if you're going to be working on the run game big time, I think the Broncos are going to lean on that a lot and then go to the play action. And that just sets up for Hireman being the guy on the field. And then the other part that I think is going to play into it is Emmanuel Sanders. If he's recovered by week one, then you're going to see a lot of those 3 wide, 11 personnel kind of sets. If Sanders isn't ready to go, I think you're going to see a lot more 2 tight end, 2 wide receiver sets.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think that, eventually we will see Fant take over as that tight end one. He should have the same amount of snaps, honestly. There's going to be situations where they use him. But I think looking at the offense, just from where my vantage point is, I see Hireman more as the F tight end, where, he is a solid receiver, can do some stuff if they dump it off to him, but much more attached to the offensive line, where you have Fant as the F tight end, and, you're doing pre-snap motion with him, you're isolating him out wide or in the slot against the linebacker. F, the way I think about it, F stands for flex. So those type of tight ends that are move pieces instead of the Y tight end. So that's how I foresee it. But again, the offense is a little bit of ebb and flow. Defenses are, different ways to attack it these days. Speed, linebacker, especially in the middle, defensive tackles getting smaller but faster. So a little bit of counteraction to that, 2 tight end sets. And we've seen teams be more effective yards per attempt passing wise out of those 2 tight end sets than out of 11 personnel. So definitely something to watch. And what did you think of Scangarello's comments about, saying that Kittle is not at all a player like Fant? Like that was brought up and he's like, I don't think they're the same type of player at all.
Well, I mean, I would say Kittle is closer to Hawkinson.
Yes.
When you're watching him and just being that inline blocker, being a guy that you leave on the field every single play. And so I understand there's definitely big differences in what they do on the field. But I still think what you did with George Kittle, you could do with Noah Fant, at least in the receiving game side of things. I think there's a lot of plays that you can run to scheme him open. I mean, I remember the Broncos when we played and George Kittle just destroyed us. And there's a lot of plays that they did to scheme him open. Well, I want to see them do the same thing with Noah Fant. Yeah. I want to see them, I mean, you and I talked about this with Iowa, where they like to flood one zone and kind of have guys split off. One guy go left, one guy go right, and one guy stay in the middle. And the zone people, you got 2 guys trying to cover 3 players. They got to make a choice. And a lot of times Noah Fant is the one that's in the middle, and they seem to scatter with the receivers. I don't know why you would leave Noah Fant alone, but that's what they choose to do. And so I want to see a lot of plays like that where you're working to scheme him open and then let him just run down the field. And I think the Broncos can do that. This is the first. I'm really torn. I want to trust that Scangarello is going to be different than our last 2 coordinators, but just I expected a lot more from our last two coordinators as well, and it never really came to fruition. So I'm a little nervous of how that's going to transition of him becoming an offensive coordinator after being there in San Francisco. But at the same time, I like the people that he's mentored under. So some of that is why I'm a little bit hesitant on how these rookies are going to do, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I do like that they talked about, you hit the nail on the head. I do think that Fant is more of if we're looking at the Patriots, we like to use that two tight end set. They don't really have that Gronk player that's an extension of the offensive line, but can still threat up the seam with tough catches. But they have the speed guy who can stress you horizontally and vertically in the Aaron Hernandez type in Noah Fant. So going to be really excited to see how they utilize him and have an explosive weapon over the middle for the pass game. I think that, we could be overshooting the expectations. We could be undershooting them, but I think that, about 12 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, about 675 yards, and 55 to 60 receptions seems about right. But yeah, should be exciting. Probably the best tight end group we'll see in a year, and hopefully everybody can stay healthy, because if they can, maybe they have something there in that quartet of Big Ten tight ends. But moving on now, the next guy that honestly maybe gotten the second most hype out of this class, even ahead of Noah Fant, is Dalton Risner. And we thought when he was drafted, he played right tackle for Kansas State, I believe, over the last 2 years. I know he had some center reps as well in his career, but right tackle mostly. However, there's been talk, or most people assume that he's going to be moving into the interior at the next level, not super athletic guy, not super long guy that you want for the tackle position. So moving to the interior, and most people, including myself, thought right guard Dalton Risner and left guard Ronald Leary. Well, it actually sounds like Dalton Risner is going to be playing left guard next to Garrett Bowles, who spilled the beans there on an interview last week or so. So what do you think about Risner moving to left guard and moving Ronald Leary back to right guard?
I think if you're talking about playing this zone system, you need a left guard that can move. And right now, especially with where they're in their careers, Leary with all of his injuries, and he's more of a power gap blocker anyway.
Yeah,
I think it makes a lot more sense to have Risner there at that left guard spot when you're going to have him moving, pulling, all those kind of things more so than the right guard spot. So I think the move makes sense. The only thing that I worry about a little bit is just right guard. There's a lot more similarities to right tackle than left guard. I mean, you're talking about dropping a different foot back to really handle that kind of, I don't know, there's just a lot more movements. It's kind of like that switch from right tackle to left tackle. It's not as easy as people think it is. I mean, you're talking about different punches. You're talking about different footwork. But I think he's one of those guys that he is, I mean, we had him on here. He's very well-spoken, very smart kid, very willing to put in the work, all those kind of things. And so I think it'll work out. I do worry a little bit about Leary and just what does he have left? What is he? And how good of a fit is he in this system? I think that's the one big question I have, but I do think being right guard helps limit some of his limitations.
I guess the real question is, I know we're supposed to be talking about the rookie class here, but is there a chance Ronald Leary isn't even starting?
Well, I mean, it depends a little bit on his recovery from his injury. If he can't get on the field, especially with the new coaching staff, they're not going to feel comfortable putting him out there just because he's a veteran.
Yeah.
And so there's some concern there, especially if Sam Jones has developed a lot, because then you can keep Connor McGovern there at that right guard spot that he's used to. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos kind of lean that way of wanting to get the young guys in there and see what they can do of building this offensive line to something better, because Leary's not in the future beyond this year. I can't really see him being a Bronco next season. And so to me, if you're building for 2020 and 2021, it makes sense to start getting some of those young guys in there and getting them some experience. So it does depend a little bit on how Leary's recovered, but I would feel better if Leary is healthy, having him in there compared to a Sam Jones and Connor McGovern combination there.
Yeah, I mean, the future is now, right? So hopefully I'm pulling for Sam Jones, because not only is it about, replacing Ronald Leary going forward, maybe even this year, but Connor McGovern's on a contract year. So if you could have Dalton Risner and Sam Jones step up and really show out this year, Garrett Bowles take the next step, Jawann James, prove that he's worth the deal, only need really one spot next year on the offensive line where you're deciding between, maybe developing another guy, et cetera. I mean, I'm not ruling out Elijah Wilkinson either, but I think Sam Jones is the guy I'm more interested in at this point. So we'll see. But I think year one, Risner, we'll see him do okay. There are some pretty good pass rushers in the AFC West still, despite the Oakland Raiders struggles, although, they hit that position with Colin Farrell. But on the interior, I mean, Chris Jones against Risner, talk about a matchup. I mean, you got a Kansas boy in Chris Jones, originally Mississippi State, and Dalton Risner, Kansas State. So that'll be, I'm sure that's a matchup that I'm looking forward to tremendously. I'm also looking forward to Ingram and Bosa. They'd like to use those guys' versatility, move them inside sometimes. So Risner will have a tough time, and I'm a little bit, I don't know. I'm interested to see the dynamic between Garrett Bowles and Dalton Risner, because Risner seems like a good guy, but also he can be a jerk on the field. And if Bowles is doing stuff that's making Risner's job harder, I don't know if Risner will be too kind to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's why I loved the idea of Risner being at right guard, just because I knew that right side was completely set. You could make sure that your help is more to the left side and just trust that those two guys are going to work well together. I don't know about the combination of Bowles and Risner. I mean, I know Bowles says that he's excited about it, but there again, I don't know what Bowles is yet. We don't. None of us do. And we don't know what Risner is either, but I at least know Risner is going to put in the work. I don't know if Bowles is going to put in the work. And so, I mean, and they just seem like such polar opposites when it comes to personality, when it comes to what they bring to the field. Because, like I said, Risner, I can tell he's a smart guy. He's a hard worker. Bowles is more of that athletic freak, but yet doesn't seem to know how to use it and isn't always the best studier, isn't always the best at knowing exactly what's happening on the field. And so it is. It's just kind of an example of polar opposites now expected to work together and try to figure out how to make it work. And if I'm a defense, that is the group I'm attacking for sure. Yeah.
Well, I guess it'll depend on what we see with the Leary position as well. But yeah, we'll see. I think if you read between the lines of Matt McChesney's tweets and comments and everything, I don't think that he is the fondest of Garrett Bowles' work ethic. That's not just the playbook. That's getting in the weight room and doing technical stuff. So yeah, we'll see. But it's going to be interesting. Garrett Bowles definitely, he had an up and down season last year. I thought he played better down the stretch until he had an okay third quarter of the year, and then the fourth quarter kind of fell off again, inconsistent. So we'll see. But Risner there, I feel at least one of the interior spots is safe going forward. So he'll have a solid year. I don't think it'll be spectacular, and I'm not expecting Quentin Nelson level, but I think that he'll be solid and hopefully square away one of those interior positions for the next 4 or 5 years. So we're going to keep talking about this rookie class here, year one expectations. But first, we're going to take a quick break.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we're back on the Building the Broncos podcast to talk year one expectations for the new Denver Broncos rookies. We just got done covering the first two picks, and Noah Fant and Dalton Risner. And now things get interesting with, man, there's a lot of hype around this guy already. I guess I can believe it, but it's pretty crazy. The third pick is just this, he's the headline, but that's how quarterback is in any sport, but especially in a town like Denver. So year one expectations for the Broncos' current second string quarterback, Drew Lock.
Yeah, I watched some of the throws today from practice, and I don't want to be that guy that reads too much into anything, but remembering watching all the videos from the last couple years and how many times receivers had to make adjustments to watching with Flacco throwing, to watching with Locke throw. It just, things were on time. Things were right where they should be. It was just, again, it's OTAs. Nobody's going completely 100%, but it just gave me a little bit of ease compared to years past. And I love listening to this guy talk. He just seems to get it. He seems to know the work that it's going to take to get out there and do his job. And I even love the fire of Joe Flacco today. Did you hear his comments?
I heard that it's not his job to develop Drew Lock, essentially, is what.
Well, and it's not.
No, I don't think so.
I don't. I would hate to be that guy that's training the guy that's supposed to replace me. I couldn't do it at my job.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, thanks. I'm working myself out of a job here. But no, I loved it. He said, I'm here to win games. And I'm sure he'll rub off on Drew Lock, but I hope that's kind of the attitude Drew Lock has too, of I'm here to win games too, and I'm going to go do my work. And they just kind of treat this as their job, like they should be. And I don't know. So I'm excited to see what these guys do moving forward. I'm excited when they get into training camp, get some pads on, what they actually look like. But I think the future could be bright here with this kid. I almost bought his jersey the other day. Oh my goodness!
Wow.
I know that's like the death toll right there. That would make
Please wait. Please hold off.
I know. I will. I will. But it's just so much of this season for him depends on Flacco and what the team's doing. I mean, the best thing that could happen for the Broncos, if you're talking about just the team success, means Drew Lock's not playing a single game this year. It means that they're competitive clear to the end of the season. They need Joe Flacco out there winning every game possible. And they're right there in that playoff race. I don't know if they're quite that team. I think you and I are pretty much in agreement that 7-9 to 9-7 range seems to be the area for this team. I think they are better, but I don't think they're that much better that they're playoff team, especially when you're looking at the Chiefs and the Chargers both looking like top 10 teams in the NFL this season.
And the schedule in general.
Right. Yeah. The schedule. Yeah. It looks crazy. And so I could see Drew Lock getting those last couple games and I don't know, we'll see with Joe Flacco, how much he can hold up for an entire season. But I do. My guess is probably 2 to 3 games is what he will be in the game doing some things. And I think he does okay. I don't think he goes out there and wows people like you would hope, but he is a rookie and he wasn't expected to be a day one starter. And I like your stats that you wrote down in our outline. 644 yards in 4 games, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That sounds pretty close to being right. I would maybe give him 1 more touchdown. 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Just I'm trying to be nice. And he is one of those guys. I think he can take a few chances in those kind of games where the coaches will be like, hey, these games don't matter. Go out there and just let it fly, man. And I think he can maybe connect on a couple nice ones down the field.
Yeah, I think I had 4 games, but 2 starts. So like some games maybe comes in late, kind of mop-up duty kind of thing, where the Broncos are either getting beat or, have the lead. Or maybe Flacco injured. So I had 2 starts, maybe 1 more touchdown. But I don't know. I think this Broncos offense is going to still be run predicated this season. So we'll see there. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to – I don't know when we'll see him. I mean, the season has to play out. I think Flacco is going to be better than people expect. Maybe that's scary to say, but I think people have pretty low expectations on Joe Flacco right now. And I think he'll be solid. I don't think he's going to be great, but if they're asking him to be great, you're already in trouble because when you give him a 4th-round pick, you're not trading for a quote-unquote great quarterback. So we'll see. I think the longer you have Drew Lock held off by Joe Flacco and, they're both kind of pushing each other, that kind of friendly rivalry there, I think that's a good thing. But in reality, the sooner we see Lock this season taking over, probably the worse off for everybody because I don't know if he's year 1 ready. He does have plenty to work on. I don't want his confidence to wane in any way. I'd rather, take it a little easy. It's a little, obviously he's not going to be Paxton Lynch who takes this year as like a sabbatical. He's going to get in a lot of Fortnite, but still I think he's got stuff to work on. And if all things work out well, we see Flacco play a majority of the season. Broncos, if they're in the playoff hunt, just ride Flacco through, obviously. Duh. But if it kind of wane off there at the end, and you have the last 2 weeks of the schedule are against Detroit and against Oakland, that seems like a good – the rest of the schedule is pretty brutal, but the last 2 games at least seem kind of a chance to take a breath, and you can kind of use those 2 games as evaluation periods if the team is, below 500 at that point. So we'll see, but it'll be interesting. I know OTAs started today. We'll see what he looks like in preseason. I'm not going to read too much into how good people are looking at OTAs or minicamp. Even preseason, we'll talk about it still, but there's doing it in practice is one thing. Doing it in a preseason game is another thing. Doing it in actual games is another thing entirely. So kind of got to view it in that sequential tiered order. So we'll see, but I'm excited about him, and hopefully, it's not a situation like Paxton Lynch, where he's out there in practice and was like, oh yeah, you see the flashes and the talent, but man, he's not accurate with a lot of the balls. And it's this Trevor Siemian guy. I mean, he looks okay, but yeah, at least he's running the offense better than that Paxton guy. That doesn't seem to be the case with Locke and Ripien right now. So
right. I will say I did cringe a little bit when they said that Drew Lock had the throw of the day.
Oh my gosh, right?
Because, I mean, how many times did we hear that about Paxton Lynch? He'd have that one great throw that everybody would be talking about, and it'd get people hyped up thinking, okay, maybe this guy's getting it, but you'd ignore the other 75% of practice. I was one of those guys. I did. I can fully admit to that. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to hear a lot more of Drew Lock was very consistent day in, day out, making the little things look good. Because, I mean, he has the arm to do the big throws. We all know that. I hope most people have watched at least one or two games from him in college and seen, hey, this guy has a good arm. He can hit every throw out there. That's not the problem. It's been more the consistency on the field that has been a little bit of a struggle for him. So that's what I would rather hear, and that would get me more excited about his future than hearing that he had the throw of the day.
Yeah, nope, I'll agree, and I'm just waiting to see until I can get my own eyes on it. So we get 5 preseason games this year because the Hall of Fame game. So
right, he should start the very first one.
That will definitely have me tuning in, and it'll make all the games. Obviously we're going to watch all of it no matter what. But when there's fun young quarterbacks to watch and evaluate as well, it just makes it all a little bit more entertaining. All right, well, moving on now, we got Dre'Mont Jones, the interior defensive lineman from Ohio State, and I thought it was pretty interesting to hear that at rookie training camp, they had him playing some zero technique.
I guess I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, he said he'd been playing from like 4 to 0 technique so far in the defensive front, and not 5 tech, which is, yeah, I would assume we'd see some reps there. I think the 0 technique, maybe you're going to see him there on like the super packages where they're really, working to get into the backfield, 3rd and long, et cetera, obvious pass downs. But he's been, it's again, rookie training camp, a guy standing out there, makes me a little bit, I mean, how much you want to buy into that? But we were hearing that about Philip Lindsay last year too, so who knows? But apparently he was really standing out, and I think it was Nikki Jablava with The Athletic, covers the Broncos, obviously, and she was talking about just how explosive and just a kind of a different kind of feel and presence that Dre'Mont Jones is bringing to the practice, and they were kind of disappointed because it was in the non-filming allowed part of that training session. So he must have been doing something right. So it has me excited. Still, he's 4th on the depth chart for me in terms of the rotation, maybe even 5th. I think Zach Kerr might be your base nose tackle this season. So how much of an opportunity is he actually going to get? The pick's probably more about next season than it is this season, but we'll still get a chance to see him. And right now I have him written down for 2.5 sacks and 28 tackles and 7 tackles for loss. Honestly, though, after talking about his role, I might be shooting it a little bit high just because I don't know how much opportunity he's going to be afforded. I mean, do you even think like Shelby Harris had enough snaps last year, considering how good he was? I don't.
Yeah, honestly, there was times where I felt like they leaned on Derek Wolfe too much.
Yeah, I don't.
I would have liked to see him.
He's so stout in the run game.
He is, but you look at what he could do in getting after the quarterback. You've seen a drop off the last couple of years, especially. But no, I mean, just last year, 6 quarterback hits, 1.5 sacks, and he was kind of that interior pass rusher for the Broncos, other than Shelby Harris. And so, I love Derek Wolfe. I really do. I love his mentality. I love the way that he composes himself on the field and off the field. I think he's kind of that tone setter that, I hate to compare him to this guy was always kind of crazy for the Broncos, but what was his name? 53 for the Broncos back in the 90s.
Bill Romanowski.
I kept getting Gronkowski stuck in my head. I'm like, no, that's not it.
Bill Romanowski.
Yeah. But, just that guy that everybody else kind of feeds off of their tone when they come on the field. But there's times where I'm looking at a guy like this or Shelby Harris that I'm going, man, these guys, they're young. They have really shown a lot better ability to get after the quarterback. And so I wouldn't mind Dre'Mont Jones getting quite a few snaps this season, especially on pass rushing situations, because that is his specialty. That's what he brings to the table. So I actually have I have higher sacks lower tackles for loss than you do. I have 4.5 sacks and 5 tackles for loss.
Okay, well, I think you're a little bit high on the sack numbers. I mean, Chris Jones only had, I think, 2 sacks his rookie season. Granted, it took him a season to kind of put it all together, but we'll see. I think he's going to have a chance to make some. He'll look like a really efficient player, but I think he's going to be in a situation where he is afforded more to produce. He's not going to have the run responsibilities that an Adam Gotsis would have, per se. And that doesn't mean, if Dre'Mont Jones had twice as many snaps, he'd be a much better player. It doesn't work that way. So
right.
We'll see there. But all right. Well, we're going to take another break, and we will be right back to talk about Justin Hollins, Jawann Winfree, and some other topics.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, and we're back here on the Building the Broncos podcast to talk, the rookie class here, and we got to finish up the day 3 guys. And honestly, I do not know what to expect with either of these guys. I just wrote down question marks for now because I don't know how much the opportunity is going to be there. And I mean, even with Justin Hollins, where the heck is he going to play? I really, is he edge? It sounds like actually he's going to be off ball, but I think that's something that still remains to be seen.
You're right. I mean, both these guys, what's going to be their role on this team? I think Jawann Winfree is going to be competing with Tim Patrick for snaps, and I'm more of a special teams kind of guy, at least this year. And then Justin Hollins, I think he's going to be more of a pass rusher than an off-ball linebacker. I think that's more of his specialty, in my opinion. And so I could see him being a guy that comes in, gets those 3 to 4 sacks, kind of almost that Shaq Barrett kind of role of being that guy that actually can make an impact and be an early guy for the Broncos that they can trust and get on the field. I like his game. He's one of those picks I was really, really excited about. I know you were too. And I think the Broncos, at least from what I was listening to, I mean, you always have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, of course, what you're hearing from coaches and stuff like that. But it was very interesting. Vic Fangio, a lot of players, he would really say, hey, they got to work on this. They got to work on this. They got to do this, that. He got to Justin Hollins, and he had nothing but praise to say about this kid.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, to me, just listening to Vic Fangio for a little bit, he's one of those guys that's a very straight shooter. He doesn't sugarcoat things. And so if he actually has something good to say about you, I think that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, I cannot disagree with you at all there. And it'll be fun to see him. I think that probably these two guys, your big year 1 impact, probably special teams, right? Like on offense for Jawann Winfree, if he's taking majority of reps, either, total aberration and things went really right for him, or on the Broncos offense, things went really, really wrong. Same with Hollins. If you're seeing him out there, either wow, surprise, lucky lottery hit. Why wasn't Oregon playing this guy at off-ball linebacker or whatever all along? But most likely, probably a special teams guy. And that has value. I mean, if you can get special teams reps and some developmental upside from your day 3 picks, that's about as much as you can hope for. Anything beyond that is gravy. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys play out. But I think that they're definitely guys that I need to see what they look like on tape this year, even preseason. Then I'll have a much better opinion on where they really rank compared to their peers and what we can expect with them. But, it's a clean slate now. We have our preconceived notions about some of these guys, but they're all Denver Broncos now. So, square one. I don't really care about your draft status or where you came. You're all on the same playing field now, and you got to work to compete to make that spot. So, going to go in open-minded in that regard, and hopefully some other guys stand out. I know that Andrew Mason was, tweeting out about Malik Reed today, so that's exciting, saying he's really twitched and looking really good out there. So, hey, Jeff Holland, look out, man. That could be coming for your spot, but it should be a pretty good rookie class here. Not the volume of players that we've seen recently with the Broncos, but still, I'll take quality over quantity every time, considering draft picks are pretty much coin flips, if even worse odds, maybe even a dice roll the farther down you go. So it'll be good. But you have another question here. I think we'll save that for next time. But the second year players. But I think I'm going to ask you a couple questions here about this rookie class.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Your most valuable rookie this season is?
Dalton Risner.
Why is that?
because I think he's the one true starter of this group. I mean, I know Noah Fant's going to get his reps and things like that. Dre'Mont Jones is going to get some reps. I think most of these guys are actually going to get on the field at some point. But Dalton Risner is that guy. I think he's going to be pretty much, if he's healthy, every snap on offense. And to me, how the offensive line goes is how our offense goes. Joe Flacco's not one of those guys that can really escape the pocket well. He's not a scrambler or anything like that. Our receiving options are good, not great, I would say. And the run game, I mean, I love our running backs. I really do. Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, and such. But even there, it's still very dependent on the offensive line. And so if Dalton Risner can be a true star there, especially at that left guard spot for the Broncos, I think it can really be a huge indicator of how our offense goes this season. What about you?
For me, probably I will go with Noah Fant just because I think that, going to the first round pick, real shocker there, but I think he's going to really open up the offense and he's going to really help with their red zone efficiency, scoring number wise. So I think both of those things really just a big impact. So I probably either of them, but I don't know, be a little different. I'll go with Fant for that regard. How about your least valuable player year one?
I mean, I'm going to have to go Jawann Winfree. I mean, that's the cop-out because he's our 6th round pick. Yeah. But I just think that was the one pick that really shocked me. Mm-hmm. That just made me go, I don't know what they're seeing in this kid. And I hadn't really watched him a whole lot, I guess, before that. And even after I've watched him, I'm going, okay. I mean, it makes some sense. But I don't think he beats out Tim Patrick. And so I think his real impact is going to be special teams. I do think Drew Lock will at least see the field a little bit this season. And, of course, quarterback, I mean, their impact is multiplied compared to that of a wide receiver playing special teams. And I do think Justin Hollins is going to have a little bit bigger impact than some might expect. We'll kind of see what his role is with the Broncos. But especially if he can show some coverage ability, man, that guy's going to see the field a lot this season. And so, I mean, again, that's kind of the cop-out answer because he is the last pick that the Broncos made. But he's the one player that I'm sitting here looking at and going, yeah, I just don't see what your role other than special teams is with the Broncos this season. Is that your kind of thought too, or is there somebody else that sticks out to you?
I think it's probably got to be Winfree. I guess the honorable mention might be Drew Lock as far as least valuable because, hey, maybe he doesn't even see the field because Joe Flacco and the offense look so good without him. So that's the super orange-colored glasses, rosy perspective. Drew Lock, just because Joe Flacco is, reborn and we have the elite quarterback again. So probably Jawann Winfree. I think if they didn't trade up for him, I would be worried maybe he doesn't even make the team. But now that they traded up, since they trade up, do you think that adds anything to it? I mean, how bad would it look if they traded up to get Jawann Winfree and then it turns out that undrafted free agent McKnight or whatever beats him out and you have Winfree, they try to sneak him on the practice squad and he gets picked up elsewhere. But I mean, is there an added pressure to keep him on the roster because of that? Or are you a clean slate guy as well?
Oh, I mean, I'm a clean slate guy, especially a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, if he doesn't make the roster, and yes, we traded up for him, but it's still a 6th round pick. I mean, I look at our 6th round picks from the last few years. How many of them have really been any kind of impact yet? I mean, last year,
Will Parks, was he 6th?
Yeah, he was a 6th round pick, but even there, it took him a while to get going.
Yeah.
Before that, you got Darius Kilgo. You got 2017 D'Angelo Henderson.
Oh, yeah, Hop.
2018, hopefully Sam Jones makes an impact, but Keyshawn Bierria so far hasn't really done a whole lot. Matt Paradis, I guess he was a 6th round pick, but even there, first year, he didn't do anything. He was on practice squad.
He was practice squad, yeah. So maybe they'll be able to sneak him on there.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I mean, I wouldn't mind if he makes the roster either, but if there's somebody else that beats him out, I've always been best player wins. And to me, the difference between a 6th round pick and an undrafted guy, not a whole lot of difference. And so I'm really taking the guy with the higher upside if somebody else is better than Winfree.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, and it'll be interesting, I think, Tim Patrick and Winfree are kind of similar players a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think those are probably the competition you see. And I do like Patrick, but if Winfree beats him out, I mean, what are you going to do?
Right.
So
and
we'll
that's, I'd rather, I mean, you got the guy that's going to be here for 4 years, possibly on a rookie contract compared to Tim Patrick. I'm not sure how many years he has left.
I think two.
So, I mean, you still hope to keep the guy with 4 years compared to 2.
Yeah.
And I think Winfree has a lot higher upside than what you see with Tim Patrick. I see a little bit better route runner than I do with Tim Patrick when Winfree is healthy. But I don't know. I mean, Tim Patrick, he's at least the proven player, the guy you can trust to be on the field and go make a play for you. So it'll be interesting to see that kind of battle. I had this question with somebody on Twitter earlier, actually, about where are the camp battles? And it's not really much for the starters. Really, most of those positions are figured out. There's a couple with just what kind of role they're going to play, like Kareem Jackson. Are they safety? Are they cornerback? How that's going to play out. The linebacker spot a little bit, especially if Justin Hollins can develop as an off-ball linebacker. Well, then what do you do there? But beyond that, there's really not many questions, I would say. And so the battles are those backup spots. When you're looking at wide receiver depth of Tim Patrick versus Jawann Winfree, when you're looking at backup for the pass rushers, Justin Hollins, you're looking at Malik Reed, who you talked about earlier, some of those kind of guys, the backup defensive line spots. I mean, all these guys except for Noah Fant and Dalton Risner all are battling for those number 2, number 3 kind of spots on the roster in their positions. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, of where they fit all these guys and other young players when it comes to the final 53.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one last question here. Looking back in the class 5 years from now, the biggest pick ends up being?
Well, I mean, since I almost bought his jersey the other day, Drew Lock. It's hard to argue with quarterback. If they become a starter in the NFL, the rest of the draft class is pretty much, unless they are an all-pro, Hall of Fame kind of player, it's hard to beat that. And so for me, I think Drew Lock is the future at the quarterback position, at least over the next 3 years after this season. And I think he can really turn into something that the Broncos can build around. And I'm excited to see his development from rookie here through his 4th year in the NFL. Is there another guy for you?
I think it's got to be Drew Lock as the hope, but I'm going to go with Noah Fant again. I think that's a little bit safer of a pick than taking the second-round quarterback. But, if we're hoping and praying, it's got to be Drew Lock, because if they hit on that pick and he ends up being, even a Derek Carr level quarterback, you have value with the next 4 seasons of that deal. Let's say even he doesn't play this year, but he ends up being a hit. You have value there. Now, obviously, when he comes to free agency, that's going to be another debate entirely. Maybe the whole Dak Prescott thing right now. Is he worth a $30 million a year contract? Probably not. But if you let him walk, then you are back stuck wandering the desert when you had a capable quarterback there. So luckily, that's something we don't have to worry about for a little bit. We need to see if Drew Lock even is a hit yet. But I think just to be a little bit different than you and play the odds, I'll probably go with Noah Fant as the guy. But we'll see. I'm hoping it is actually Drew Lock. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering your Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.